$100 million every single day. That is the estimated daily hemorrhage flowing out of Dubai's tourism and hospitality ecosystem right now. Not as a projection, not as a worst-case model, but as the arithmetic consequence of what is already documented and visible: hotels closing, occupancy floors collapsing, supplier chains snapping, and a banking sector sitting on a portfolio of hospitality debt that was underwritten against a reality that no longer exists. $100 million a day is not a crisis. It is a verdict, and the verdict is still being read. What makes this moment different from every previous turbulence Dubai has absorbed is not the scale of the loss, it is the simultaneity. Every other shock this city has absorbed, the 2008 financial crisis, the 2016 oil price collapse, the pandemic, arrived with some properties standing, while others fell. This time, the closures are happening across the entire premium tier at once. We are going to trace exactly what that means, from the hotel lobbies to the bank balance sheets to the thousands of workers whose livelihoods were built on a foundation that is now moving beneath them. If you have been watching Dubai from the outside and sensing that something structural has shifted, you are not wrong, and you deserve to understand precisely what it is. The occupancy numbers are the first thing to understand, and they are the last thing the industry wants discussed publicly. Sources tracking Dubai's hospitality sector in early 2025 are reporting figures that no analyst modeled into their loan covenants or revenue projections. Occupancy rates across the luxury tier are sitting between 10 and 30%. 10% means 9 out of every 10 rooms in a 5-star property are generating zero revenue while costing full operational expense to maintain. The lighting runs, the air conditioning runs. The filtration systems for the pools and the water features and the aquariums run. The minimum staffing required to keep a property legally compliant and structurally maintained runs. What does not run is the cash flow that was supposed to pay for all of it. At 10% occupancy, the question is not whether a property is profitable, it is how many weeks before the operating reserves run dry. For a resort like Atlantis the Palm, which employs over 1,000 staff and operates 40 restaurants, a water park, an aquarium, and a marina simultaneously, the daily burn rate at minimal occupancy is not a number that any investor presentation was designed to survive. Here is what a collapsing hotel sector looks like at street level. It does not look like debris, it looks like a sign on a lobby door. The Burj Al Arab, the hotel that Dubai built as the literal icon of its own ambition, is closed, fully, for 18 months. The Armani Hotel inside the Burj Khalifa closed for renovation, which in the language of distressed hospitality management means closed because the alternative was worse. The Anantara World Islands Resort closed entirely. St. Regis, partial closure. Park Hyatt closing the 1st of May for an unspecified period. Radisson Blu closing at the end of April. These properties together employ thousands of workers. Each one trails a supply chain of hundreds of businesses. Food distributors, linen services, event organizers, transport operators, cleaning contractors, maintenance firms. Every closure sends a shockwave through that network instantly. Picture Ahmed, a Filipino driver who built his livelihood over 8 years running transfers for the Park Hyatt's concierge desk. Guaranteed volume, predictable income. He bought a car on credit to expand his capacity 18 months ago. The Park Hyatt closing on the 1st of May does not just eliminate his bookings, it eliminates them without a recovery timeline. He does not know if the hotel reopens in 3 months or 18. He cannot plan around an unspecified period. He is making payments on a vehicle that has no work to do. Now multiply that story by the thousands of similar positions across every hotel in the closure wave. These are not statistics. They are the unit cells of an economy that was calibrated to a level of activity it is no longer experiencing. And when those cells stop generating income, they stop paying rent, stop buying groceries at local markets, stop using local services, stop feeding the secondary and tertiary layers of the economy that assumed the tourists and the hotel workers and the supplier employees would always be there. The contraction does not stay inside the hotels. It spreads outward, and it spreads fast. This is the part the official statements are not designed to address. Every closure announcement uses the language of strategic refresh, renovation, repositioning. These words serve a purpose. They allow the industry to signal a future reopening without triggering the word that no lender, no regulator, and no government wants attached to a flagship property. But the financial reality underneath the language is that these properties are carrying debt structures that were modeled against occupancy rates that are now, in some cases, 7 times higher than what is actually being achieved. And when a property cannot service its debt from operating revenue, it begins drawing down reserves, then begins negotiating with lenders, then closes for an unspecified period. Would you book a 5-star resort that you know spent 18 months in a closure you cannot fully explain? Would you pay the premium for an address that just spent a year and a half being described as undergoing renovation? That question is not hypothetical. It is the question every future guest will be asking when these properties attempt to reopen. Leave your answer in the comments because it is the single variable that determines whether the recovery scenario is even possible. Dubai's banks are holding an undisclosed but significant volume of hospitality loans that are now, quietly, in distress. Not all of them are technically in default yet. Loan covenants have grace periods. Lenders have every incentive to extend rather than trigger a formal default that forces them to recognize the loss on their balance sheet. But every month of extension at 10% occupancy is another month of deteriorating collateral value. The properties are not just losing revenue. They are losing the maintenance investment that keeps their physical asset value intact. A water park that runs at minimal capacity for 18 months is not the same asset it was at full operation. The equipment degrades. The staff expertise disperses. The brand perception erodes. And brand perception, in luxury hospitality, is almost the entire product. The government is not sitting still. Measures under active consideration include arrival visas, waived or substantially reduced visa fees, tourism tax relief, and promotional campaigns targeting markets that Dubai has not historically prioritized. These are rational responses. They are also, relative to the scale of what is happening, insufficient. Stimulating inbound tourism demand, when the properties designed to host that demand are simultaneously closing, is not a strategy. It is a timing problem. You cannot fill rooms that are locked. And you cannot unlock rooms faster than the financial restructuring that is currently happening behind closed doors inside every major Dubai bank's real estate and hospitality desk. The deeper question nobody in the official communication channel wants to engage with is whether Dubai's luxury hospitality model has a structural ceiling that it has now hit. The model depends on continuous premium pricing. Premium pricing depends on continuous premium experience. Premium experience depends on premium staffing ratios, immaculate maintenance, fully operational facilities, and the psychological confidence that comes from being somewhere that performs flawlessly. A review from a couple who flew to Atlantis and found the lazy river closed for 2.5 hours, the bathrooms unclean, the seating areas uncleaned, and the staff unable to provide any information, is not a bad review. It is a signal that the premium experience is no longer being delivered at the price point it is being charged. And in the age of real-time review platforms that aggregate those signals globally within hours, the gap between what a property charges and what it delivers is not a recoverable asset in the short term. It is a published fact. The $100 million daily figure is not a precise audit. It is an order of magnitude estimate constructed from occupancy rate data, average daily rate benchmarks for the tier of properties involved, multiplier estimates for the supplier and secondary economy impact, and labor income that has been suspended or eliminated. The real number may be higher. It almost certainly is not lower. And it is compounding. Every day at 10% occupancy is another day of fixed costs paid from reserves. Every week of deferred maintenance is another increment of asset degradation. Every week of absent hotel workers is another week of reduced spending in the secondary economy. The bleeding does not pause on weekends. There is a question underneath all of this that Dubai has never had to answer directly, because it has always managed to absorb its shocks before they forced the answer. The question is what the city is without the performance of invincibility. Dubai's brand is not beaches or history or culture in the traditional sense. It is the feeling that anything is possible here, that the rules of physical and economic gravity have been suspended by force of will and sovereign capital. Atlantis, the Palm, was not a hotel. It was proof of that feeling. The Burj Al Arab was not a hotel. It was proof of that feeling. When those proofs go dark simultaneously, the feeling does not survive unchanged. A city built on the projection of limitlessness is not the same city when the limits become visible. Can you rebuild the mystique of a destination that was defined entirely by the absence of visible cracks? And if you cannot, what does that mean for every other city on Earth that borrowed Dubai's playbook and is currently watching the original edition fall apart? Some recoveries happen, some renovations are exactly what they say they are. But $100 million a day is not waiting for the announcement. If this kind of analysis is what you come here for, like this video so someone else who needs to understand this finds it. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the next chapter of this story is going to move faster than anyone is forecasting, and you should not be the last to know. Share this with someone who is trying to make sense of what is happening in Dubai right now, because the gap between the official narrative and the financial reality is exactly where the decisions that affect real lives are being made. This channel exists to close that gap.